Hi there, everybody. This is John Drew here from Elevated Planet, and I am here today with Ruah Bull. How are you doing, Ruah?
I'm good today. Very happy to be with you, John.
Yeah, and that's the thing about at the moment. I'm excited about the future. I know there's a lot of bad stuff going on out there. I know there's a lot of areas, and we still do our Thursday um, Pam Gregory guided meditation, like just to join in that energy as well, because anything that helps to magnetize New Earth consciousness,
Right.
anything that where you're reaching out to those in the troubled spots in the world and sending them
Hmm.
all the positive emotions. As Pam
Hmm.
would say, we do not focus on the suffering because that magnetizes suffering. You focus on the energies you want them to feel, and we put
Hmm.
that out into the quantum wave structure, and the elevation will come through that.
Right.
So I think that's really important. Now, just as a point of interest, just going back to one of the points you made earlier, like about in America, where the degree of separation relative to, say, the Eastern kind of way of looking at things, which still has, as does a lot of indigenous
Hmm.
folks, still have that unity thing that's going on. They've never been dragged into the separation. But all the degrees of separation that are out there, whether it's race, religion, sexuality, there are so many different ways of defining that. And that is done for a
Hmm.
very specific reason. It's a
Hmm.
separation test. Because the more division you create, the more, forget unity, right? Here we are. We got 100 versions. Which boxes are you going to take? Because you've got to be a he, him, or a her. I don't even know how to interpret that. You know, we're here as individuated expressions of divine consciousness, each and every one of us. We're each here on our own journey. Now, the point is that those who are stuck in the separation have the longest journey back, right? Because,
Hmm.
if you really feel very defined as an, I like this is who I am. I really don't like these people over here.
Hmm.
And you can understand how it happens because if you
Sure.
watch the news, if you
Yeah.
listen to the programming that is going
Yeah.
on all the time,
Yeah.
you're going to get drawn into this. And I see people around me who are drawn into the narrative that they've been fed. And you can tell they've been drawn into the narrative because the words they use are the words that is they've been, they've just heard from the news because they have no direct access to that work that they're talking about, or those circumstances they're talking about. So literally, it means that the media is being taken seriously,
Right.
and that
Right.
narrative is then being perpetrated and put out there. But that's all part of the test. And again, I don't judge anybody on that because, again, there by the grace of God go I.
Hmm.
I had an awakening call, and all of a sudden, like 8 years now, I'm kind of like I have a higher level of awareness. But
Right.
I have plenty of friends who've not even started this journey, and I don't try to preach to anybody, right? Because I know that everybody has divine timing that they come online and start to realize it for themselves, or
Right.
maybe they don't, because
Right.
maybe they're just here to hold the shadow, to hold that's part of their soul growth is to say, actually, no, this time around, I don't go into the heart. I'm going to stay over here because that creates the space for others to actually go in this direction.
Exactly.
Selfless.
Yes. Right. It's, and something you said about our own individual journey, and that individual journey is part of this whole that is, that like the Native American people have a really strong sense of tribe.
Mm.
If you ask somebody, who are you? They'll start telling you about their mother's tribe and their father's tribe and and they'll tell you about the water table that they live on and the land. I mean, they are totally oriented towards the land that is a part of their being and their tribe. And yes, there were definitely tribes that fought each other and all that, but there were lots of them that didn't. And it seems like as people grow spiritually, your sense of who your tribe is gets bigger and bigger.
Mm.
You know,
Mm.
you,
Mm.
your family, and then it can go out, to all women or all people or all animals or all countries. And it gets, I remember on Fox News one time when we had little kids in cages down at the border. I mean, these pictures of these little 3-year-olds, crying with their fingers through it's like you just wanted to like die. And this Fox guy said, yeah, it's too bad, but they're not our children. And I remember thinking, the thing that I felt glad about is I didn't want to throw my shoe at the television. Instead, I thought, that poor guy,
Hmm.
he doesn't know that all the babies are all of our babies. I don't have physical children, but every child on this planet is a child of mine. And
Mm,
he's like the people you're talking about. He doesn't know that.
mm,
And Great Spirit, when the time is right, may he learn that. But that's
mm,
not where
mm.
he is.
No.
And here in the States, there have been all these books, one's called Bowling Alone, the collapse of community. And so many people don't have a sense of belonging to a tight community. What's interesting though for people, what brings people together oftentimes is disaster.
Mm,
I mean, the people in Minneapolis, they like came right together. I have a cousin, retired lawyer. He and his daughter and granddaughters were bringing food to people who were afraid to leave their homes and baby, diapers and stuff. When we went through the fires, neighbors that had never talked to each other were out on the street. Are you okay? Do you need food? I've got a chair. Here's an older person. So somehow, but wouldn't it be nice if we could do that without there having to be some massive crisis? But
yeah.
that is something I think a lot of us are starting to remember
Mm,
is, that the Christian metaphor is the body of Christ. We are all part of the body of Christ. Other traditions will, I think in Judaism, it's Adama, the original man, but that we are all parts of that, and we all have our place and our point. And I'm just, I don't know why I was gifted with this, but I'm sure glad that people like us have this consciousness because it is what's trying to come back
mhm.
is a sense of connection.
It is. It is. And I do think that this is the reason why, I do think the next 2 to 3 years is going to be quite turbulent for a
Yeah.
purpose, right? Because, to your point, I mean, I remember when the COVID thing struck and say around where my dad lives, a
Mm,
man in his 80s, and but it was amazing how everybody pulled together,
yeah.
and they did talk. I mean, to be fair, it wasn't like they wouldn't have talked to each other normally, but people came round and would say to my dad, "Look, I am going to go down to the shops. Let me know what you want. I'll get it for you." And
Mhm.
just like, and my dad would go around and help other people as well. It's just
Yeah.
like, and that sense of community
Ah,
that really does draw together. And crises are a great way, well, not a
to-
great
to-
way, but they're a
I know, but
way, they're a way of drawing people together because that is how you survive. And I think, to me, this is why we have our elevated planet communities because community is everything in the future. And we're all different for a reason. We're
yeah,
all individuated pieces of a jigsaw puzzle, a cosmic jigsaw puzzle, and
yeah.
together we kind of create this picture.
The
And
whole,
it
that's
works.
right.
It
That's
works.
right. That's right. I wanted to just tell this one story because you were talking about the way things were created to create division. And there's a story about after World War II that people might find of interest. Um, some people will say it was unintended consequences. Other people will say not unintended. There's an old book called Levittown, and it talks about how after World War II, the government was funding different builders, et cetera, and trying to figure out how to create homes for men coming back, the GI Bill, everybody was going to be able to buy their house, right? A huge explosion in home ownership. There were two models. One model was in San Francisco during World War II. The women and families of the men who were overseas were put up like in these apartment buildings,
Mhm.
and they all had their separate apartment, but there was a floor that had like a playroom and the place where they did their laundry with the washing machines and dryers. And so there was common space. The other model was everybody had their own little house.
Mm,
Well, they started building, and the first one was called Levittown, um, these individual houses because it was a lot better for the uh, money people to sell 30 washing machine and dryers to 30
mm,
houses rather than 6 to 30 people
mm,
living in an
mm,
apartment building. But what happened is you have these houses spread out. Now, sometimes people, the women would have little coffee clutches and stuff, and they could do that. But it
mm,
started to split everybody because they're coming in, they don't know. And again, some suburban neighborhoods, got together, but that was like a wedge that was put in where they created these new communities and everybody had their own dishwasher and their own car, and that exploded the economy, but it really started to sever roots and community.
mm, mm.
And then that made it easier for a corporation to say, well, I know you're in Philadelphia, but we need you in Denver. And yeah, I know your family is, but too bad because you need to be in Denver. So you pick up from one house and you go plunk into another house with your own washing machine and dryer. So it's been fascinating to see the splits and that everybody, and oh, that's another last thing I wanted to say too about predictions. I really pay attention when a number of people are saying the same thing, maybe with different words or
Mm, mm.
vocabulary, but we've got astrologers and psychics and and people of prayer all talking the same thing about we're moving through intense turbulence to get to the birth of and it's going to be tough and we're going to need each other, we're going to need community, but we're going to get through it because what's waiting is the world that's in the process of being birthed now.
Yes. Yes, it is. I agree entirely that this is, again, as you also say these days, that new beginnings are often disguised as painful endings, right?
Absolutely, absolutely,
Lao
yeah.
Tzu knew a thing or two, and this is kind of made to measure with that particular quote. So, yeah, it is. It's a fascinating time. It's a time I feel excitement for where we are because I know that where we are ultimately going to is incredible. It's
Mhm,
it is a world of unspeakable beauty. To get
mhm.
there, we have to get rid of the old. The old cycle. And I find it's interesting, like it began, the new cycle began on the 22nd of December 2012, right? Okay, Mayan
Yes,
calendar. And
yes,
that was the first day of
yes,
the new feminine energy coming in. But
yes,
of course, it's not flipping a light switch, is it?
right.
It takes
Yeah,
around 18 years from that date to get to the completion of the handover, if you like, which takes you to 2030. But again, we have to be confronted by things that are so bad that we now realize that we need that feminine collaborative energy to lead the
energy, right,
way
right.
because the old egoic, narcissistic, masculine, top down control agenda clearly does not work.
Does
It
not
is
work.
not for the people,
Yeah,
it is for the elite.
yeah,
We realize
yeah,
that. But,
yeah.
people have come online with that over these next 2.5 years. Fantastic opportunities to wake up is what is going to be happening.
Yeah, I mean, it's happening here a lot, like with people who really believed what Trump said. And now they're realizing how they've been lied to. A lot of the young men, who put that kind of a person on a pedestal are seeing how empty it is. Um, and there's a lot of reaction, the manosphere and all that kind of stuff. And but that always happens. You start
Mhm.
doing something and then, the intense racism comes up, the misogyny comes up, and we have to deal with that. But I agree with you. It's like if somebody's in therapy, you don't get to the light unless, in fact, as soon as you open up to the light, what starts coming up is the shadow. It's, you know, how many people they start a meditation practice and then they stop it because as soon they think they're going to go in and it's going to be all kumbaya. And sometimes it is. I mean, I've been doing this practice for 25 years now. I started in 2001. And first 2 years I would go and it would just be like, just peaceful and hardly any thoughts. But then the doo-doo started to hit the fan and all these memories or anger or all these really uncomfortable emotions would come up, and it was the unloading of the unconscious. A couple things I actually had to take to a healer, but you have to know what's happening because otherwise you can just say, you know, oh my God, this is terrible. I need to not do this. But it's coming up to be released and healed. And I'm imagining, John, as you're talking, that you're saying that that's what's happening collectively.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, people were saying, oh, we're post-racist, we're post-feminist. And I'm going like, are you crazy? Well, now we all know that's not true. So it's coming up.
Yeah,
And how do you respond? How do I respond? It'll be similar, it'll be different, but it's all in service to wholeness.
it is. It is, you know, and they do say that whatever hits the fan does not get evenly distributed. So I think we'll see how that see how that plays out. But I also heard that like every 13,000 year cycle, you know, there's the precession of the equinoxes,
Hmm.
which takes place every 25,920 years, which is where we are right now. It's gone through the complete cycle. But each
Right.
13,000 year cycle is masculine, feminine, masculine, feminine. But as each cycle draws to a close, you see the dysfunction. The dysfunction of that masculine energy is destined to grow. And arguably, we could have this conversation again in 13,000 years' time and talk about how the dysfunction of the feminine energy is now off the scale.
Absolutely. Because it's I like the phrase the toxic masculine because I really like masculine energy. And in fact, I have a fair amount of masculine energy in me. I have a lot of that vibe, but it's the toxicity. And, you know, I remember back in the early days when people were talking about in the women's movement, oh, if only women were in charge. I'm going, Margaret Thatcher?
Yeah.
Um, you know, but because you're right, there's shadow of both. My hope and prayer. I know that these calendars are they just go in a circle, and the Western um, calendar coming out of the Jewish tradition is more like evolutionary.
Mm,
So I'm hoping it's more evolutionary, where the toxic masculine right now is lousy, but at least it's not like, you know, slaughtering women in the streets.
mm.
And so hopefully with each cycle, the imbalance is maybe a little bit less brutal than the previous 13,000
Well,
years.
I
Praise
personally
God.
think that where we're heading, and you had a vision of this, didn't you? Looking forward, you know, many years ahead. I think we're in for a beautiful time. I really do. You know, and like it'll go beyond my lifetime, your
Yeah.
lifetime, but we'll be back, right? You
I'm
know,
I'm
we'll be back
apparently
to
and I'm
experience.
apparently, in fact, after we spoke about Israel, I should say this, that one of our first conversations, I told you I didn't know you could do a future progression because I thought I was doing a past life,
Mm, yeah.
but I was 200 years in the future in Jerusalem, and I'm a minor city official. So Jerusalem survives. It looked fairly modest, but it was beautiful. And again, remembering it's not about perfection. People will still be people and they'll still be like jealousies or hurt feelings or whatever. So it's not about some fantasy of perfection because that doesn't exist in this plane, but it is so much more healthy and so much more connected and so much more tender and so much more beautiful, you know?
Yeah. We have so much to look forward to,
I
right?
know.
So much to look forward to.
We'll have to
Enjoy.
make an agreement. In the one of our future lives, we're going to have to find each other again. I know you, remember?
Yeah, we're going to do this interview again.
And we probably won't need technology. We'll just go into like a mind meld and then
That's
send it
it.
out to the cosmos. There
That's
you go.
it. One way or another, we're going to do it. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
All right,
I'm going
love.
to
Well, we're
write it.
probably coming to the end, right?
Yes, I'm going to write that in my calendar for my 13,000 year calendar to, anyway.
There
As
you go.
always, Ruah, thank you. It's
This
always
was,
enlightening. We must do it again soon because I've got to explore my inner squirrel.
you have got to find your squirrel. I have all these friends who get so upset because the squirrels get into the bird feeder. And I just say to them, well, I don't have that problem. And they said, why? I said, because I just put bird seed all over the ground for the squirrels. So it's like they deserve to be, and plus I like to watch them because they are entertaining as hell, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
They are very funny.
They
All
are.
right, dear one. Well,
Okay.
listen, have a good bit, and we'll figure out next time when we go find your spirit animal,
Mm,
possibly even animals. Doesn't
who
have to be just
knows?
one. Who knows?
Maybe
We'll find out.
maybe there's a muskrat in there or something.
Maybe there's some there's got to be something that's playful.
Yeah.
Okay, as soon as I saw that, I just saw a fox by a hole of something looking in and jumping around. So you've got to there's something in there that's very playful. So we'll find out what that is, okay?
I'm excited to know. I'm excited to
All
know.
right. We'll make
Anyway,
that date.
okay. Lots of love, Rua. Much
You too, hon.
appreciated, and we will
Okay.
speak again soon. Thank you to everybody who's been watching
And
this.
again, always we say this is just our perspectives. This is not Moses come down off the mountain. If it lands, great. If it doesn't, that's great because sometimes seeing what doesn't resonate for you can be a very deep learning. It's like, no, wait a minute. I don't, that's not me. That's me. So just take it. And if it serves, great. And if it doesn't, let it go. All right.
Totally.
Take
Totally.
care.
Oh, wow.
All right. Bye,
Thank you
dear.
very much. Take care.
Bye,
Bye.
hon.